The gunshot shattered the evening stillness as Clara Evans stood frozen at her bedroom window, watching her father shake hands with Horace Blackburn, the cattle baron whose weathered face had haunted her nightmares since she was 16. Now, at 20, her father's debt had come due, and she was the payment promised to a man 30 years her senior with a reputation as cruel as the Dakota Territory winters. Clara's fingers trembled as she fastened the last button on her dress. Her father, once a proud rancher, had watched drought and disease claim their cattle over 2 harsh seasons. When Blackburn offered to clear his debts in exchange for Clara's hand in marriage, Thomas Evans had initially refused, but desperation changed men, and last winter's losses had broken him. The wedding was set for 2 weeks' time. "You cannot hide in your room forever," her mother's tired voice called from beyond the door. Martha Evans had once been beautiful, but years of hardship had carved deep lines around her eyes. "Your father needs to speak with you." "About selling me like cattle," Clara's voice cracked. "I heard the terms clearly enough when Mr. Blackburn visited last week." The door opened, and her mother's face appeared, ashen with worry. "This arrangement saved the ranch, Clara. Without it, we would all be destitute by winter's end." "I would rather be poor than his wife," Clara whispered, but dutifully followed her mother downstairs to where her father waited. Thomas Evans stood by the fireplace, his shoulders slumped with the burden of his decision. "Clara, I know you are upset, but upset." She struggled to keep her voice steady. "You promised me to a man who has buried 2 wives already, a man known for his cruelty throughout the territory." "Those are rumors, nothing more," her father insisted, though his eyes wouldn't meet hers. "Blackburn is offering security, not just for us but for you. He has land, money, connections. I do not love him." "Love comes with time," her mother interjected softly. "My own parents arranged my marriage to your father, and now this is different," Clara insisted. "You were not sold to settle a debt." Her father's face hardened. "Enough, the arrangement is made. You will marry Horace Blackburn 2 weeks from Saturday. That is final." Clara fled to the barn, her sanctuary since childhood. Collapsing onto a hay bale, she allowed her tears to fall freely. The ranch had been her home for all 20 years of her life, nestled in the rolling hills of the Dakota Territory. The year was 1876, and while other young women her age were finding husbands of their choosing or pursuing education back east, she was being traded like property. She didn't notice she wasn't alone until a throat cleared softly. Startled, Clara looked up to find a tall figure standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the setting sun. "Begging your pardon, miss," the stranger said, removing his hat. "I didn't mean to intrude on your privacy." Clara hastily wiped her tears. The man before her was perhaps 25, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His clothes marked him as a working cowboy, dusty from the trail but of good quality. "Who are you?" she demanded, embarrassed to be caught crying. "Brody Lawson, madam." He kept a respectful distance. "Your father hired me on yesterday to help with the spring calving. I was just coming to check on a heifer that looked close to her time." Clara nodded, composing herself. "Of course, please don't let me keep you from your duties." But Brody didn't move. "Forgive me for saying so, but it seems something's troubling you, something fierce." His directness surprised her. Most cowboys kept to themselves, especially around the rancher's daughter. "Nothing that concerns a hired hand," she replied, more sharply than intended. He smiled, not taking offense. "Fair enough, but sometimes talking to a stranger can be easier than family." He gestured to the hay bale across from her. "May I?" Against her better judgment, Clara nodded. There was something in his open expression that invited confidence. Brody settled across from her. "I've worked ranches all over from Texas to Montana, seen just about every kind of trouble that can find a person out here. Sometimes having a fresh pair of ears helps." Clara studied him for a long moment. "Have you ever been trapped, Mr. Lawson?" "So completely that you cannot see any way out." His expression grew thoughtful. "Can't say that I have, at least not permanently, though I did spend 3 days in a line shack during a blizzard once, thought I might never see daylight again." Despite herself, Clara smiled. "This is somewhat different. I figured as much." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Is it true what the hands are saying, that you're to marry Horace Blackburn? Clara stiffened. News travels fast. It's a small territory and Blackburn owns half of it. Brody's voice hardened slightly. I worked for him briefly last year, left after 2 months. Why? Clara asked, suddenly intensely interested. Let's just say he doesn't treat his cattle, his hands, or his women with particular kindness. Brody met her gaze directly. If you don't mind my asking, why would your father arrange such a match? Clara hesitated, but something in Brody's straightforward manner compelled honesty. My father owes Mr. Blackburn a considerable sum. This marriage will clear the debt. Brody's jaw tightened. That's not a marriage. That's a transaction. Precisely. Clara blinked back fresh tears. And I am the commodity being traded. When is this wedding supposed to happen? 2 weeks from Saturday. Clara's voice was barely audible. I have dreamed of leaving this territory, perhaps teaching school back east. Now I will be trapped in a loveless marriage to a man old enough to be my father. Brody was silent for a long moment, then stood abruptly. Miss Evans, I don't mean to overstep, but this isn't right. No woman should be forced to marry against her will, debt or no debt. What choice do I have? Clara looked up at him, desperation plain on her face. If I refuse, my family loses everything. There's always a choice, Brody said quietly. Sometimes you just need help seeing it. Before Clara could respond, a voice called from outside the barn. Clara, are you in there? It's my mother, she whispered, rising quickly. You should go, Mr. Lawson. Brody nodded, but before turning to leave, he said, I'll be around if you need to talk again, Miss Evans. Sometimes solutions come from unexpected places. Clara watched him disappear into the shadows of the barn just as her mother appeared in the doorway. That night, she lay awake long after the house had gone quiet, Brody Lawson's words echoing in her mind. The idea that she might have a choice, that there might be another path, was dangerous and thrilling all at once. The following days passed in a blur of wedding preparations that Clara endured with a numb detachment. Blackburn visited twice, bringing expensive fabrics for her wedding dress and jewelry that felt like shackles when she tried them on. His smiles never reached his cold eyes, and when he touched her hand, she fought the urge to recoil. She found herself seeking out Brody's company, first with invented excuses to visit the pastures or stables, then more openly as they developed a friendship that offered her rare moments of happiness. He told her stories of his travels, of the vastness of Texas and the mountains of Colorado. She shared her dreams of seeing the great cities of the East, of teaching children to read and write. You'd make a fine teacher, he told her one afternoon as they sat by the creek that marked the eastern boundary of her father's property. You've got the patience for it. A dream that will never come true now, Clara sighed, tossing a pebble into the water. Don't be so sure. Brody's voice had an intensity that made her look up. Clara, I've been thinking about your situation. There might be a way out. What do you mean? Her heart quickened. Blackburn's claim on you is based on your father's debt, but what if that debt was paid another way? Clara shook her head. My father has tried everything. The bank won't extend more credit, and our neighbors are struggling too much to help. I'm not talking about borrowing more money. Brody leaned closer. I'm talking about finding something valuable enough to pay off Blackburn directly. And where would we find such a treasure? Clara asked, but curiosity had replaced the resignation in her voice. Brody lowered his voice, though they were alone. There's talk of gold in the Black Hills, not just talk, I've seen it myself. Last year before I worked for Blackburn, I was with a prospecting party. We found color, but then the army ran us off, said we were on Sioux land. The Black Hills are dangerous, Clara protested. Not just because of the Indians. There are outlaws, claim jumpers, and a chance for freedom, Brody finished. I know a place the others didn't find, a hidden valley with a stream that was thick with gold dust. 2 weeks of work there could yield enough to pay your father's debt twice over. Clara stared at him, hope and doubt warring within her. Why would you help me this way? You barely know me. Brody's eyes held hers. Maybe I see something worth fighting for. Maybe I can't stand by and watch a woman like you thrown away on a man like Blackburn. A flush spread across Clara's cheeks. Even if what you say is true, my father would never allow me to go prospecting in the Black Hills. Who said anything about telling him? Brody's smile was both reckless and reassuring. We leave tomorrow before dawn, spend 10 days mining, return with enough gold to pay off Blackburn, and you're free to choose your own path. You're suggesting I run away? Clara's voice rose in shock. I'm suggesting you fight for your future, Brody countered. We'd leave a note so they don't think you've been kidnapped. 10 days, Clara. 10 days that could change your life. Clara stood and paced along the creek bank. This is madness. If we're caught, my father would lose everything, and you could be arrested or worse. Some things are worth the risk. Brody rose and gently turned her to face him. The question is, are you willing to take it? Clara looked into his eyes and saw something that had been missing from her life hope. If I agree to this, how would we even get there? I cannot ride all the way to the Black Hills. I have a plan for that too, Brody smiled. Trust me, Clara, I won't let anything happen to you. That night, Clara lay awake, her mind racing between fear and possibility. By morning, her decision was made. She packed a small bag with only essentials, wrote a brief note explaining she needed time to think before the wedding, and slipped out to meet Brody at the agreed location, a stand of cottonwoods a quarter-mile from the ranch house. He was waiting with 2 horses, already saddled. Are you sure about this? He asked as she approached. Clara took a deep breath of the pre-dawn air. No, but I'm even less sure about marrying Horace Blackburn. Brody's smile was all the reassurance she needed. He helped her mount, and they set off just as the eastern sky began to lighten. They rode hard that first day, stopping only to rest the horses and eat the provisions Brody had packed. By nightfall, they were deep in territory Clara had never seen, camping beside a small stream sheltered by towering pines. We're making good time, Brody said as he built a small fire. Should reach the hills in 3 more days if the weather holds. Clara watched him work, admiring the efficiency of his movements. Have you done this often? Helped damsels in distress escape unwanted marriages? He laughed, a warm sound that made her smile. Can't say that I have. You're my first rescue mission. Why me? She asked softly. Truly, Brody, you're risking so much. He was quiet for a moment, feeding small sticks to the growing flames. The first day I saw you in that barn, crying but still holding your head high, I recognized something in you. A spirit that shouldn't be broken. He looked up, his expression serious. And maybe I'm tired of drifting, of not standing for anything. This felt like something worth standing for. Clara felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Thank you for believing I'm worth the risk. The journey to the Black Hills was arduous, but exhilarating for Clara. Each day brought new vistas, rolling prairies giving way to pine-covered slopes and dramatic rock formations. Brody proved to be a knowledgeable guide, pointing out landmarks and teaching her to read the signs of wildlife and weather. On the 4th day, they reached their destination, a narrow, hidden valley with a clear stream running through it. This is it, Brody said, dismounting and helping Clara down. The place that could buy your freedom. They made camp, and Brody showed Clara how to pan for gold, a painstaking process that yielded tiny flakes of precious metal. By the end of the first day, they had collected only a small amount, but Brody remained optimistic. The real deposits are upstream, he explained. Tomorrow we'll set up proper sluices and do some digging along the banks. That night, exhausted but hopeful, they sat by the fire sharing a meal of rabbit Brody had snared. Clara found herself studying his profile in the firelight, noting the strength in his jawline and the kindness in his eyes. Tell me about your family, she said impulsively. You know all about mine, but you've shared so little about yourself. Brody's expression grew distant. Not much to tell. My father was a farmer in Missouri, lost the farm after the war, tried ranching in Kansas, lost that too, died when I was 16, leaving my mother and 3 younger sisters with nothing. What happened to them? Clara asked gently. My mother's brother took them in back east. He couldn't afford another mouth to feed, so I struck out on my own. Been working ranches ever since, sending what money I can to help with my sister's schooling. Clara touched his hand. That's honorable, Brody, he shrugged. It's what a man should do. My oldest sister is teaching now in Pennsylvania. The younger 2 are still in school. Is that why you wanted to help me? Because of your sisters, maybe partly, he admitted. I'd hate to think of any of them forced into marriage to settle a debt. His eyes met hers across the fire. But mostly it's because of you, Clara. You deserve better. The days that followed fell into a rhythm, waking at dawn, working the stream until dusk, sharing meals and conversation by the fire each night. Their gold collection grew steadily, stored in a leather pouch Brody kept secure. Clara discovered she enjoyed the physical labor, the satisfaction of seeing tangible results from her efforts. More surprisingly, she found herself enjoying Brody's company in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. His laugh, his thoughtfulness, the way he listened when she spoke as if her words mattered, all of it was drawing her toward feelings she'd never expected. On their 6th night in the valley, a thunderstorm forced them to shelter in a small cave. Huddled together for warmth, listening to the rain pound outside, Clara found the courage to voice what had been building between them. If this works, if we get enough gold to pay my father's debt, what happens after? Brody was silent for a long moment. That would be for you to decide. You'd be free to pursue your dream of teaching. And what about you? She pressed. Would you go back to drifting from ranch to ranch? I hadn't thought that far ahead, he admitted. I've been focused on helping you escape Blackburn. Clara took a deep breath. What if I don't want to escape alone? In the dim light, she saw understanding dawn in his eyes. Clara, I know we've only known each other a short time, she hurried on. But these days with you have shown me what's possible, not just freedom from a forced marriage, but a chance at something real, something chosen. Brody's hand found hers in the darkness. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about you, but I don't have much to offer a woman like you. You offered me a choice when no one else would, Clara said softly. That's worth more than gold or land or any of the things Blackburn could provide. He moved closer, his voice a whisper. If we succeed, if we free you from this obligation, I'd like to court you properly. No rushing, no pressure. Just a chance to see if what's growing between us is as real as I think it is. Clara's answer was to lean forward and press her lips gently to his. The kiss was brief but filled with promise, and when they parted, both were smiling. The next morning brought clear skies and their biggest discovery, yet a rich deposit of gold-bearing soil along a bend in the stream. They worked feverishly, knowing their time was growing short. By the end of the 8th day, their collection had grown impressively, though Brody was still uncertain if it would be enough. One more good day should do it, he said as they ate their evening meal. Then we'll head back tomorrow night, traveling under cover of darkness. Clara nodded, but a shadow had fallen across her earlier happiness. What if my father refuses the gold? What if he insists I honor the agreement with Blackburn? Then we'll find another way, Brody said firmly. I won't let you be forced into that marriage, Clara. Your promise belongs to you, not Blackburn, not your father. His conviction gave her strength, but as they prepared to sleep, Clara couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. Her fears proved prophetic when they were awakened before dawn by the sound of horses approaching their camp. Brody was on his feet instantly, pulling Clara up with him. Quick, gather only what's essential, we need to move. Who is it? Clara whispered, frantically stuffing their gold pouch into her saddlebag. Can't be sure, but no one friendly comes calling at this hour. Brody's voice was tense as he saddled their horses with remarkable speed. They were mounting up when 4 riders emerged from the trees, blocking their escape route. Clara's heart sank as she recognized the lead rider, Horace Blackburn himself, his face a mask of cold fury. Well, well, Blackburn drawled, his rifle trained on Brody. If it isn't my runaway bride and the cowhand who thought he could steal what's mine. Miss Evans doesn't belong to you, Brody said evenly, positioning his horse slightly in front of Clara's. She's not property to be bought and sold. Blackburn's laugh was harsh. Her father and I have an agreement, legal and binding. His eyes narrowed. Step away from her, Lawson, and I might let you live. We have gold, Clara spoke up, her voice stronger than she felt. Enough to repay my father's debt to you. There's no need for this arrangement to continue. Surprise flickered across Blackburn's face, quickly replaced by calculation. Gold, you say? Show me. Brody shook his head. We'll show your banker back in town. Let him verify its worth. If it covers the debt, you'll tear up the marriage contract. You're not in a position to make demands, boy. Blackburn nodded to his men, who spread out, effectively surrounding them. What happened next unfolded in a blur. One of Blackburn's men made a grab for Clara's reins. Brody reacted instantly, knocking the man from his saddle. Guns were drawn, and in the chaos, Clara's horse reared. She clung desperately to the saddle horn as shots rang out around her. "Run, Clara," Brody shouted, drawing his own pistol. "Head for the ridge." Terrified but determined, Clara urged her horse forward, breaking through the circle of men. She heard more gunfire behind her and glanced back to see Brody exchanging shots with Blackburn's men while attempting to follow her. She reached the ridge and took cover behind a large boulder, heart pounding as she watched the scene below. Brody was galloping toward her position, pursued by 2 riders. Blackburn and another man were down, though she couldn't tell if they were injured or worse. When Brody reached her, his face was grim. "We need to keep moving. Blackburn's only wounded, and he'll come after us as soon as he can ride." "You're hurt," Clara gasped, noticing the blood staining his left sleeve. "Just a graze, I'll be fine." He winced as he adjusted his position in the saddle. "The important thing is getting you safely back to your father before Blackburn catches up." They rode hard for 2 days, taking back trails and avoiding the main routes. Brody's wound, though not serious, clearly pained him, but he refused to stop for more than brief rests. Clara tended it as best she could during these breaks, her concern growing as exhaustion etched itself on his features. "We should be approaching your father's land by nightfall," Brody said as they paused to water the horses at a small creek on the second day. "Once we're there, we'll explain everything, show him the gold, make him understand there's another way out of his debt to Blackburn." Clara wasn't as confident. "My father is a proud man. He may not accept our solution, especially given how we obtained it." "He's also a father who loves his daughter," Brody countered. "I have to believe that love will outweigh his pride." They reached the Evans ranch just as darkness fell. Lights burned in the windows of the main house, and Clara felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension as they approached. Before they could reach the yard, the front door burst open, and Thomas Evans emerged, rifle in hand. "Who goes there?" he called, raising the weapon. "It's me, father," Clara replied, dismounting slowly. "I've come home." Thomas lowered his rifle, his expression shifting from wariness to shock. "Clara, my God, child, where have you been? We've been out of our minds with worry." Martha Evans appeared in the doorway, her face pale with disbelief. "Clara," she rushed forward, embracing her daughter with tears streaming down her face. "We thought we'd lost you." "I'm sorry for worrying you," Clara said, returning her mother's embrace while watching her father's reaction to Brody, who had dismounted and was standing respectfully to one side. Thomas's face hardened as he recognized the cowboy. "Lawson, should have known you were behind this. Sheriff's been looking for you for kidnapping." "He didn't kidnap me, father," Clara said firmly, stepping away from her mother. "I left willingly. And we've brought something that will change everything." She retrieved the leather pouch from her saddlebag and held it out. "Gold, enough to repay Mr. Blackburn and free me from this arrangement." Thomas stared at the pouch, then at his daughter's determined face. "You went prospecting." "In Indian territory. Do you have any idea how dangerous?" "I know exactly how dangerous it was," Clara interrupted. "But I decided it was worth the risk rather than spend my life with a man I fear and despise." Her father's expression darkened. "That isn't your decision to make, Clara." "I gave my word to Blackburn." "A promise made under duress is no promise at all," Brody spoke up. "And with respect, sir, a father has no right to promise his daughter to a man like Horace Blackburn." "You stay out of this, cowboy," Thomas snapped. "This is family business." "Brody is the only reason I'm standing here with a solution instead of trapped in a marriage that would destroy me," Clara said, moving to stand beside him. "Please, father, at least look at what we've brought. Have it assessed. If it's enough to clear your debt, surely that satisfies your obligation to Blackburn." Martha placed a hand on her husband's arm. "Thomas, listen to her. We've been sick with worry these past days. Is this arrangement really worth our daughter's happiness?" Thomas looked from his wife to his daughter, conflict clear on his weathered face. Before he could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention to the road. "That'll be Blackburn," Brody said grimly. "He was wounded in our escape, but clearly not badly enough to stop him." Sure enough, Horace Blackburn appeared at the head of a small group of riders, his left arm in a crude sling. His face was tight with pain and anger as he reined in his horse. "Evans," he called out, "I see your wayward daughter has returned with my gold, I'm told." Thomas stiffened. "What do you mean, your gold? Anything dug from my claim in the Black Hills belongs to me," Blackburn said smoothly. "Did these two neglect to mention they were trespassing on my property when they found their little treasure?" "That's a lie," Brody said, stepping forward despite Clara's restraining hand. "That valley isn't part of any registered claim, and you know it." Blackburn dismounted awkwardly, keeping his good hand near his holstered pistol. "A court might disagree, especially when the alternative is believing a known claim jumper and a runaway bride." "Is that what this is about?" Clara asked, sudden understanding dawning. "You knew about the gold deposit all along." "That's why you arranged this marriage, to gain control of my father's land that borders the trail to the Black Hills." Blackburn's thin smile confirmed her suspicion. "Smart girl, too smart for your own good." Thomas Evans looked between Blackburn and his daughter, confusion giving way to anger. "You said my debt would be forgiven if Clara married you, nothing about my land." "The debt is real enough," Blackburn replied, "but yes, I had plans for expanding my interests northward. Your ranch is strategically placed." "So this was never about honoring a debt," Thomas said slowly. "It was about acquiring my land and my daughter in one convenient transaction. Business, Evans, nothing personal." Blackburn's hand moved closer to his gun. "Now I'll be taking what's mine, the gold, the girl, and eventually your land, one way or another." "The only thing you'll be taking is a jail cell, Blackburn." The new voice came from behind them, where Sheriff James Calloway had arrived with two deputies, their rifles trained on Blackburn and his men. "We've been tracking you since you left town with armed men, making threats about retrieving your property." Clara had never been so relieved to see the county sheriff. Calloway was a fair man known for his distaste for Blackburn's methods. "This is a private matter, Sheriff," Blackburn said smoothly. "A simple disagreement about a business arrangement." "Is that what you call shooting at unarmed civilians?" The sheriff nodded toward Brody's bandaged arm. "Or threatening a young woman who rejected your advances?" "I've been hearing interesting stories from your former ranch hands, Blackburn. Stories about how your first two wives met their ends." Blackburn's face paled slightly. "Lies and slander. We'll let a judge decide that." Calloway nodded to his deputies, who moved forward to disarm Blackburn and his men. "You're under arrest for attempted murder, kidnapping, threats, and a few other charges I'm working on." As Blackburn was led away, protesting loudly, Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She turned to find her father staring at the pouch of gold still clutched in her hand. "I had no idea," Thomas said quietly, "about Blackburn, about his plans for our land." He looked at his daughter with new eyes. "You risked everything to save us from my mistake." "I risked everything for a chance at happiness," Clara corrected gently, "and I found more than just gold." Her eyes met Brody's, and the look that passed between them was not lost on her parents. Thomas extended his hand to Brody. "It seems I owe you an apology, Lawson, and my thanks." Brody accepted the handshake. "No apology needed, sir. I only did what any man worth his salt would do." "Few men would have taken such risks for a woman they barely knew," Thomas observed. "Some things are worth fighting for," Brody replied, his eyes still on Clara. "Some promises matter more than others." In the weeks that followed, much changed at the Evans ranch. The gold was indeed sufficient to clear Thomas's debt with the bank, with enough left over to make needed improvements to the property. Sheriff Calloway's investigation into Blackburn revealed a pattern of fraud and intimidation that reached across 3 territories, ensuring he would spend many years behind bars. As for Clara and Brody, their adventure had forged a bond that only strengthened with time. True to his word, Brody courted her properly, with her father's grudging approval. They would often ride to the creek where their journey had begun, talking of dreams and possibilities. I've been thinking, Brody said one autumn afternoon as they sat watching the golden leaves drift onto the water's surface. About putting down roots, Clara smiled. That's quite a change for a drifting cowboy. Some changes come easy when you have the right reason. He took her hand. Your father offered me the foreman position. Said he needs someone he can trust to help run the ranch while he focuses on breeding better stock. And will you accept? Clara asked, though she already knew the answer from the light in his eyes. I told him I would on one condition. Brody shifted to face her fully. That he gives his blessing for me to marry his daughter when she's ready. Clara's heart soared. And what did he say? He said he reckoned any man who'd faced down guns and the law for his daughter had earned the right to ask for her hand. Brody drew a simple gold ring from his pocket. So I'm asking, Clara Evans, not today or tomorrow, but someday when you're sure, will you marry me? Clara looked at the ring, crafted from the very gold they had mined together. I don't need someday, Brody Lawson. I've been sure since that night in the cave when you said my promise belongs to me. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Clara knew she had found something far more precious than gold, a love freely chosen, a future built on mutual respect and shared dreams. A promise made not out of obligation or fear, but from the deepest place in her heart. Your father did say one more thing, Brody murmured as he drew her close for a kiss. What's that? Clara asked, her eyes shining with happiness. That he hopes our children inherit your determination and my loyalty. Brody's smile was tender. Though preferably not my tendency to break the law when backed into a corner, Clara laughed, the sound carrying across the water like music. I think that's a promise we can both keep. Their lips met as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and promise, sealing a future that neither had dared to imagine just months before, a future built not on someone else's terms, but on their own.